What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars goes head-to-head with a legendary talk show host in a battle that nobody saw coming? It only took 22 seconds for everything to explode on live television. Before we get into this absolute chaos, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations they don't want you to see, and the drama that happens when the cameras keep rolling. Last night on The View, what started as a conversation about Hollywood turned into one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history. Jamie Foxx sat down with the hosts, and within minutes, things took a turn that left the entire studio in complete silence. The tension started building the moment Jamie walked onto the set. You could feel something was off from the very beginning. The energy wasn't right. Whoopi welcomed him with her usual style, but there was something different in the air, something heavy, that made everyone uncomfortable before a single word was even spoken. The other hosts seemed nervous, glancing at each other as Jamie took his seat. Jamie walked out wearing a sharp suit, his confident swagger on display. He waved to the audience and sat down like he'd done countless times before. But if you were paying attention, you could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set tighter than normal. "Welcome back to The View, Jamie," Whoopi said, settling into her chair. "It's been a minute since we had you here." "Yeah, it has been," Jamie replied, his tone already carrying an edge. The conversation started with Jamie's latest projects, his comedy tour selling out arenas, and his music. The audience laughed at his jokes, and the hosts nodded along. But you could see Whoopi was waiting for something, biding her time before going in for what she really wanted to discuss. Then, about 5 minutes in, Whoopi brought up a topic that changed everything. The shift was so sudden you could see people in the audience sit up straighter. "So, Jamie, there's been a lot of talk lately about some comments you made in an interview about representation in Hollywood," Whoopi said, looking directly at him. "You said that some people need to stop complaining and just do the work." A lot of folks had strong reactions to that. Jamie's expression shifted instantly. The smile disappeared, replaced by something much more serious. He sat up straighter, his jaw setting. "Hold on now. That's not exactly what I said, and you know it," Jamie responded. "I feel like you're taking my words and twisting them." "Well, that's what people heard," Whoopi shot back. "And when you're someone with your platform, you need to be more careful about how your words come across. You have a responsibility." The other hosts exchanged nervous looks, deciding whether to jump in or let this play out. "More careful?" Jamie repeated, his voice rising. "Whoopi, I've been in this industry for over 30 years. I've fought for every opportunity I've gotten. So don't tell me I need to be more careful about speaking my truth." Whoopi leaned forward, her expression hardening. "Your truth? Jamie, your truth affects other people. Young actors look up to you. And when you say things that sound like you're dismissing their struggles, that matters." "I'm not dismissing anyone's struggles," Jamie said, getting louder. "What I'm saying is that at some point, you have to stop talking about what's wrong and start doing something about it. That's how I made it. You can't just complain your way to success." The audience was dead silent now. This wasn't the fun conversation anyone expected. "But Jamie, you're talking from a position of privilege now," one of the other hosts chimed in, trying to mediate but actually just adding fuel to the fire. "You've already made it. You're successful. You're wealthy. You're famous. Not everyone has had the same opportunities you've had, and not everyone has the same advantages." Jamie turned to face her, his frustration now completely visible on his face. His eyes were wide. His hands were moving as he talked, and you could see he was getting more and more heated by the second. "Privilege? You think what I went through was privileged?" His voice was loud now, echoing through the studio. "You think growing up the way I did was privilege? You think grinding for years, getting rejected over and over, working multiple jobs just to survive while trying to make it in this industry was privilege? I came from nothing, absolutely nothing. I worked my ass off to get where I am, every single day. And nobody's taking that away from you, Whoopi interrupted, her voice sharp and cutting. Nobody is saying you didn't work hard. What we're saying is that the industry has changed. The challenges have changed. The conversations have changed. And your comments made it sound like you don't understand that. Or worse, that you don't care. So now you're telling me I don't understand the industry I've been working in my entire adult life? Jamie shot back immediately, not missing a beat. His voice was now cutting through the studio like a razor. That's what we're doing here? You're going to sit there and tell me, Jamie Foxx, that I don't understand Hollywood? Are you serious right now? Whoopi didn't flinch. She held his gaze with an intensity that matched his own. I'm telling you that maybe you need to listen more and talk less about things you clearly don't fully grasp anymore. The world has moved on, Jamie. Maybe you should too. The gasp from the audience was audible and instant. This had just crossed a major line, and everyone in that studio knew it. The other hosts looked absolutely shocked. One of them put her hand over her mouth. Another one's eyes went wide. This was no longer just a disagreement. This was personal now. Jamie stared at Whoopi for a long moment. His jaw clenched so tight you could see the muscles in his face working. His hands were gripping the armrests of his chair, and for a second, it looked like he was trying to decide whether to respond or just get up and leave, right then and there. You know what, that's real rich coming from you, Jamie finally said, his voice low and dangerous. You sit up here every single day, telling people how they should think, how they should feel, what they should believe. You act like you're the moral authority on everything. But the moment someone pushes back, the moment someone challenges you or disagrees with your perspective, suddenly they're the problem. Suddenly, they're the one who doesn't understand. This isn't about pushing back, Whoopi said, her voice firm and controlled, but with an underlying anger that was impossible to miss. This is about you not taking responsibility for your words and how they impact people. It's about you refusing to acknowledge that what you said was hurtful to a lot of folks who are out there struggling. Impact people? Jamie laughed, but there was absolutely no humor in it. It was a bitter, angry sound that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. The only thing impacting people right now is this holier-than-thou attitude you got going on. Like you're the voice of reason for everybody watching. Like you speak for all of America or something. The studio audience was completely split now. Some people were nodding along with Whoopi, clearly agreeing with her position. Others were shaking their heads, siding with Jamie. A few people looked like they just wanted to leave, uncomfortable with how intense and personal this had become. The camera operators kept zooming in, catching every facial expression, every moment of raw emotion that was playing out on that stage. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a real fight, happening in real time. One of the other hosts finally found her voice and tried to interject, speaking quickly and nervously. I think what we're trying to say, Jamie, is that words have power, especially when they come from someone in your position, someone with your platform and influence. And maybe there's a way to have this conversation that doesn't involve us all getting so heated about it. Maybe we can take a step back and approach this differently. But Jamie barely even looked at her. His focus was entirely locked on Whoopi now, like they were the only two people in the room. No, I know exactly what's being said here. I'm being told that my lived experience doesn't matter. That my perspective, the perspective I earned through decades of work and struggle, is somehow wrong or outdated. That I should just shut up and agree with whatever narrative is being pushed. And I'm not doing that. I refuse to do that. The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point. You could feel it in the air like electricity before a storm. The producers off camera were clearly in crisis mode, probably screaming into their headsets about whether to cut to commercial or let this explosive moment play out for the ratings. The other hosts kept exchanging worried glances, silently communicating about whether they should intervene more forcefully or just let this train wreck continue to unfold. But Whoopi and Jamie were locked in this battle now, neither one willing to back down, neither one willing to give the other an inch of ground. Jamie, I think you need to take a breath and think about what you're saying right now. Whoopi said, her tone shifting to something more serious, more controlled, like she was talking to someone who was out of line. Because you're on national television, and you're making yourself look really bad right now. Don't tell me what I need to do, Jamie snapped back immediately, his finger pointing across the table at her. Don't you dare sit there and tell me to take a breath, like I'm some kind of child who doesn't know how to conduct himself. I came here to have a conversation, not to be lectured and condescended to like I'm some idiot who doesn't know any better. Then maybe you should stop acting like one. Whoopi fired back instantly. Without even a pause, the studio went completely silent. Like, dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. That comment hung in the air, like a bomb that had just detonated, and everyone was waiting to see what the fallout would be. The other hosts looked absolutely horrified. The audience was frozen, mouths open, unable to believe what they had just heard. Jamie's expression went from frustrated to absolutely furious in a split second. "Excuse me?" Jamie said, his voice dangerously quiet now, which somehow felt even more intense than when he was yelling. "What did you just say to me?" Whoopi held his gaze, not backing down for even a second, not showing even a hint of regret for what she had just said. "You heard me. You come on this show. You say things that hurt people. You refuse to take any accountability for it. And then when you're called out on it, you throw a tantrum instead of having an actual adult conversation about it." Jamie stood up from his chair so fast it almost fell backward. The movement was so sudden and so aggressive that several people in the audience actually jumped in their seats. You could hear gasps echoing through the studio, people whispering nervously to each other, wondering if this was about to get physical, wondering if security needed to step in and intervene. The energy in the room shifted from tense to genuinely alarming in an instant. "A tantrum?" Jamie's voice boomed across the studio now, louder than it had been at any point during the entire interview. The sound system amplified his voice, making it echo off the walls. "I'm not throwing a damn tantrum, Whoopi. What I'm doing is refusing to sit here and be disrespected by someone who thinks she knows everything about everything. Someone who thinks she can say whatever she wants, insult whoever she wants, without any consequences." The other hosts were frozen now, completely unsure of what to do. One of them had her hands clasped together like she was praying this would end soon. Another one looked like she was about to cry from the stress of being caught in the middle of this explosive confrontation. They had signed up to discuss current events and pop culture, not to referee a full-blown war between two entertainment legends. "Jamie, sit down," Whoopi said firmly, also standing up now so they were facing each other across the table. Her voice was commanding, authoritative. "Let's finish this conversation like adults. Let's actually talk this through instead of you getting all emotional about it." "Finish it? We're done here," Jamie said, his hands going to his microphone, ripping it off his lapel with such force that it made a loud popping sound through the audio system. "I don't need this. I don't need to sit here and be talked down to on national television by someone who clearly has no respect for me or anything I've accomplished." The other hosts tried to intervene now, their voices overlapping as they attempted desperately to calm the situation and save what was left of the interview. "Let's all just take a second," one of them said, her voice shaky and uncertain. "We can work through this. Let's all just calm down and talk this out. Jamie, please, let's just take a beat," another host added, standing up and reaching out like she wanted to physically stop him from leaving. "We can reset here. We can start over and have a better conversation." But Jamie wasn't hearing any of it. He was already moving toward the edge of the set, his microphone pack being pulled off by a frantic crew member who looked absolutely terrified to be in the middle of this explosive situation. "Jamie, if you walk off this set right now, you're proving my point," Whoopi called after him, her voice echoing through the studio with absolute confidence. "You're proving that you can't handle criticism. You're proving that you're not mature enough to have difficult conversations." Jamie stopped dead in his tracks. He stopped so suddenly that you could see his whole body tense up, For a moment, he just stood there with his back to everyone, and you could see his shoulders rising and falling as he took deep breaths. Then he turned back around to face her one more time, and the look on his face was pure rage. "Your point?" he said, his voice shaking with anger. "Your point is that anyone who disagrees with you is wrong, that anyone who challenges you is immature, that anyone who doesn't bow down to your opinion is somehow lesser than you. That's not a conversation, Whoopi. That's not dialogue, that's a lecture. That's you sitting in your chair acting like you're better than everyone else. And I'm not here for it. I'm not playing that game." "Then leave," Whoopi said, crossing her arms and standing her ground. She wasn't budging at all. If anything, she seemed even more determined now. If you can't handle being challenged on your own words, if you can't handle someone questioning your perspective, then go ahead and leave. Run away. That's what people do when they know they're wrong but won't admit it. "Oh, I'm leaving," Jamie said, taking a few steps back toward the set, pointing at Whoopi with such intensity that it looked like he wanted to say so much more than what was coming out. "Trust me on that. But don't you dare act like this is on me. Don't you dare pretend like you didn't want this confrontation from the moment I sat down. You came at me with an agenda, and we both know it." "I wanted an honest conversation," Whoopi shot back, her voice rising to match his energy. "You're the one who made it personal. You're the one who couldn't handle a simple question about your own words. That's on you, not me. You called me a child," Jamie shouted, his voice reaching a peak that made everyone in the studio physically recoil. The sound was so loud and so raw that it felt like the whole building shook. "You stood there on your show, on your platform, and you insulted me in front of millions of people. You disrespected me. And now you want to act like I'm the problem? Like I'm the one who escalated this?" The energy in the room was absolutely electric at this point. You could feel the tension, like a physical presence. Cameras were still rolling, capturing every single second of this meltdown. Every angry word, every furious gesture. The producers were clearly debating whether to cut to commercial, but this was too explosive, too dramatic, too incredible to stop now. This was the kind of television that people would be talking about for years. "I called out your behavior," Whoopi clarified, her voice still strong and unwavering, refusing to apologize or back down even slightly. There's a difference between calling someone a child and saying they're acting childish. If you can't see that difference, if you can't understand that distinction, then maybe you do need to leave. Maybe you're not ready for this conversation. Jamie shook his head, a bitter smile spreading across his face. It was the kind of smile that showed he couldn't believe what he was hearing, that he was beyond frustrated and moving into a place of complete disbelief. "Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm and anger. "You know what the real problem is here? You can't stand when someone doesn't bow down to your opinion. You've been doing this show for so long, sitting in that chair for so many years, that you've forgotten that not everyone has to agree with you. You've forgotten that other people have valid perspectives too. You think you're always right, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong. This has nothing to do with agreement," Whoopi said, her voice getting even more intense. She took a step closer to where Jamie stood at the edge of the set, closing the distance between them in a way that felt almost confrontational. "This has to do with accountability. This has to do with taking responsibility for your words and your actions, something you clearly struggle with." "Accountability?" Jamie laughed again, that same harsh sound that had no joy in it. "I'm accountable every single day of my life, to my family, to my fans, to everyone who supported me. What I'm not accountable to is your judgment. I don't answer to you, and I sure as hell don't need to stand here and take this disrespect." Whoopi took another step forward. "You want to talk about disrespect? How about the disrespect you showed when you told people to stop complaining? How about when you acted like hard work alone is enough?" "I never said that," Jamie shouted, his voice cracking. "That's you putting words in my mouth. I said complaining without action doesn't get you anywhere. That's real talk from someone who's lived it." The other hosts were frozen now, unsure how to intervene. This had spiraled beyond anything they could control. Jamie, I think we should all take a break. One of the hosts tried again, her voice shaky and desperate. Let's go to commercial and cool off. Let's give everyone a chance to breathe and collect themselves. I don't need to cool off, Jamie said. His voice still elevated, but now with a kind of controlled fury that was somehow even more intense than the yelling. He pointed at Whoopi again, his hand shaking slightly with the force of his emotion. I need her to understand that she can't just attack people and expect them to sit there and take it. I need her to understand that having a talk show doesn't give you the right to tear people down. Attack you. Whoopi's voice rose now too, her composure starting to crack for the first time during this whole exchange. I asked you a legitimate question about comments you made publicly, comments that were reported in multiple outlets, comments that hurt people. If that feels like an attack to you, maybe you need to examine why you're so defensive about it. I'm defensive because you came at me from the jump, Jamie argued, his voice booming through the studio again. This wasn't a question. This wasn't a conversation. This was an ambush. This was a setup. You had your mind made up about me before I even walked through that door, and you know it. You decided I was wrong, and nothing I could say was going to change that. Oh, please, Whoopi said, waving her hand dismissively in a gesture that clearly infuriated Jamie even more. Don't play the victim here. Don't act like you're being persecuted. You said what you said, it's on the record, and you need to own it. Take responsibility for your words, instead of blaming everyone else for how they were received. I do own it, Jamie shouted, his voice cracking slightly with the intensity of his emotion. I own everything I've ever said. What I don't own is your twisted interpretation of it. You put words in my mouth, you assigned meaning that wasn't there, and then you got mad when I didn't apologize for something I didn't even say. That's not fair, and you know it. The argument had reached an absolute fever pitch now. Both of them were standing, both of them were red in the face, both of them were so invested in this battle that nothing else seemed to matter. They were facing each other across the set, voices raised, neither willing to give an inch, neither willing to admit any fault. You know what your problem is, Jamie? Whoopi said, her voice cutting through the chaos with razor-sharp precision. You think because you're talented and successful and famous, you're above criticism. You think your accomplishments somehow shield you from having to examine your own behavior. You're not above it. Nobody is. And you know what your problem is? Jamie fired right back without missing a beat, his words coming fast and furious now. You think, because you've been on television for decades, because you've won awards and built this platform, you get to decide what's right and wrong for everybody else. You think you're the moral compass of America. You think your opinion is the only one that matters. Well, newsflash, Whoopi, you don't get to decide that. You're not the authority on everything. The studio audience didn't know whether to applaud, gasp, or stay silent. Some people were recording on their phones, capturing every moment of this historic blow-up. I'm done with this, Jamie said finally, throwing his hands up in complete exasperation. His whole body language screamed frustration and anger. I came here in good faith. I came here thinking we could have a real conversation, an honest exchange of ideas. And this is what I get. Disrespect, accusations, judgment, and a whole lot of self-righteous BS from someone who thinks she has all the answers. Then go, Whoopi said coldly, her arms still crossed, her expression hard as stone. Nobody's forcing you to stay. If you can't handle the heat, if you can't handle being held accountable, then walk out that door. Be my guest. Oh, I'm gone, Jamie said, already walking toward the exit with purpose and determination. Trust me, I'm out of here. But let me tell you something before I leave, something you need to hear. This right here, this attitude you got, this superiority complex, this is exactly why people are getting tired of this show. You don't want conversations. You don't want dialogue. You don't want to hear different perspectives. You want compliance. You want people to nod their heads and agree with everything you say. And I don't comply to nobody. Not you, not anyone. Good luck with that attitude, Whoopi called after him, her voice dripping with disdain. See how far it gets you in life. See how many bridges you can burn with that kind of arrogance. Jamie stopped one more time at the very edge of the stage, right before the backstage door. He turned back to face Whoopi, to face the cameras, to face everyone watching this unfold. His chest was heaving, his face was flushed, and he looked like a man who had absolutely reached his limit. It's gotten me pretty damn far already, he said, his voice powerful and defiant. Further than sitting on a couch judging everybody else will ever get you. I've built my career on talent, on hard work, on dedication, not on tearing other people down, not on acting like I'm better than everyone. So you can keep your moral high ground, Whoopi. You can keep thinking you're right about everything. But I'm done being your punching bag for today. One of the other hosts stood up, trying one last desperate time to salvage something from this disaster. Jamie, please, let's just talk this out. Let's take 5 minutes and come back and have a real conversation. This doesn't have to end like this. But Jamie was already shaking his head, already moving toward the door. Nah, we're way past that point now. Some things you can't come back from. Some things, once they're said, you can't unsay. And what was said here today, the disrespect that was shown here today, that's not something I'm interested in trying to fix. Whoopi remained standing at the table, watching him go, her expression unreadable now. She wasn't backing down, wasn't apologizing, wasn't showing any regret for how this had unfolded. That's right. Walk away, she said, her final words to Jamie cutting through the stunned silence of the studio like a knife. Walk away when it gets tough. Walk away when someone challenges you. That's what people do when they know they can't defend their position. That's what people do when they're wrong, but too proud to admit it. Jamie paused at the door, his hand on the handle, his back to everyone. For a second, it looked like he might turn around and come back for one more round, one more explosive exchange. The entire studio held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. You could have heard a pin drop in that moment. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, not wanting to miss a single second of whatever was about to happen. But instead of turning back, Jamie just shook his head one final time, a gesture that conveyed more disappointment and disgust than any words could. Then he pushed through the door with such force that it slammed against the wall, the sound echoing through the studio like a gunshot. The finality of that sound said everything. This was over. There was no coming back from this. With that, Jamie Foxx walked off the view set for good, leaving Whoopi Goldberg standing there in the middle of the stage, her arms still crossed, her expression still defiant. The other hosts sat in complete shock, their faces showing a mixture of disbelief, fear, and uncertainty about what they had just witnessed and what it would mean for the show. The entire studio audience remained in stunned silence, processing what they had just seen unfold before their eyes. The cameras captured Jamie pushing through the backstage door, his security team scrambling to follow. You could hear raised voices from backstage, people trying to talk to him, but his voice could be heard above them all. I'm not doing this. Get me out of here. I'm done with this bullshit. Back on stage, the reality settled over everyone like a heavy blanket. The audience sat in stunned silence. Some were still recording, others looked at each other in disbelief. Whoopi slowly sat back down, her expression still hard. She didn't look upset or regretful. If anything, she looked vindicated. The other hosts looked at each other in complete disbelief, shaking and pale. The production team cut to commercial, but the damage was done. Every word, every gesture had been recorded. Two legends had just gone to war on live television. Backstage, chaos continued. Producers were on phones calling executives and lawyers. The audience talked among themselves, some texting friends about what they witnessed, others checking social media, where clips were already spreading. Back on stage, Whoopi picked up her coffee mug and took a sip calmly. The other hosts didn't know what to do. This was raw, unfiltered, explosive television, the kind that would be replayed everywhere. talked about on every podcast. It was uncomfortable, intense, and as real as it gets. People would debate who was right for months. Some would defend Jamie, others would praise Whoopi, but everyone would remember this moment. The View had seen heated debates before, but nothing like this. This was personal. Two powerful figures going head to head with no holds barred. Words that couldn't be taken back. A relationship damaged beyond repair. It was television history, made in the most dramatic way possible, and everyone who witnessed it knew they'd just seen something extraordinary.